I stood on the front porch in the pouring rain, staring at the key in my hand. It wouldn't turn. I jiggled it. I pulled it back. I tried again. Nothing. Then I heard the deadbolt slide shut from the inside. My stepmom, Linda, opened the door just a crack. The chain was still on. She wasn't wearing her mourning black anymore. She was wearing a bright pink bathrobe and holding a glass of wine. "Linda?" I asked, confused. "My key isn't working." She took a sip of wine, looked me dead in the eye, and smiled. A smile I had never seen before. "I know," she said. "I called a locksmith an hour after the funeral. You don't live here anymore." My dad had been dead for barely 24 hours. I didn't know it then, but she had just made the biggest and most expensive mistake of her entire life. Let me back up a bit. My dad was a soft guy. He was a contractor, built houses with his bare hands, but when it came to people, he had a hard time saying no. After my mom passed away when I was 12, Dad was lonely, really lonely. Enter Linda. She met him at a diner. She was a waitress, and she had a son named Brad who was 2 years older than me. Brad was a piece of work. He was the kind of guy who would borrow $20 from your wallet and then get mad at you for asking for it back. But Linda, she played the part perfectly. She cooked lasagna. She asked about my homework. She ironed Dad's shirts. Dad fell hard. They got married 6 months later. For 10 years things were okay, but there were red flags, small ones. Like how Linda insisted Dad put her name on his checking account for emergencies, or how she slowly convinced him to fire his longtime accountant and use her guy. But the house was different. It was a house Dad built for my mom. It was a beautiful 4-bedroom Victorian restoration in a historic district. Market value? Roughly $800,000. Linda hated the house. She called it drafty and old-fashioned. She always nagged Dad to sell it so they could buy a modern condo in the city. Dad always said, "No, this is my son's home. It stays in the family." I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. Fast forward to last month. Dad had a massive heart attack. It was sudden. He was gone before the ambulance even arrived. I was devastated. I was 25, just starting my career, and I had lost my best friend. At the funeral, Linda played the grieving widow perfectly. She cried loudly. She leaned on me for support. She even told Dad's friends, "I don't know what I'll do without him." But the second the last guest left the wake, her tears dried up instantly. That brings us back to the porch. "You don't live here anymore," she said through the crack in the door. "Linda, what are you talking about? My stuff is in there." "This is my house, too." She laughed, a cold, dry laugh. "Sweetie, you're an adult. You're 25. Guests don't stay forever. Besides, Brad needs your room. He's moving back in to help me cope." I saw Brad in the background, eating a sandwich my aunt had brought for the wake. He waved at me with a smirk. "But the will," I stammered. "Oh, don't worry about the will," Linda said dismissively. "Spouses inherit everything. That's the law in this state. The house is mine. The bank accounts are mine. The trucks are mine. Now, get off my property before I call the cops for trespassing." She slammed the door. I stood there for 10 minutes, just processing it. I had my phone, my wallet, and the clothes on my back. That was it. I slept on a friend's couch that night. I felt defeated. I thought about suing, but I knew lawyers were expensive. Linda had all of Dad's money now. I had nothing. But then I remembered something. Something Dad told me 3 years ago when we were fishing. He said, "If anything ever happens to me, go to the First National Bank downtown. Ask for Box 402. Do not tell Linda." The next morning I went to the bank. I had a spare key on my keychain, the one key Linda didn't take because she thought it was a gym locker key. I sat in the private viewing room and opened the metal box. Inside there wasn't cash or gold. There was a single thick envelope and a letter addressed to me. The letter read, "Son, I love Linda, but I know she likes to spend, and I know she listens to Brad too much. I want to make sure you are always safe." Inside the envelope was a deed and a trust document. My jaw hit the floor. Dad hadn't just refused to sell the house. 5 years ago, he had transferred the house into a living trust, and the sole beneficiary of that trust was me. But it got better. Because the house was in a trust, it wasn't part of his estate. It wasn't part of the will. Linda didn't own the house. She didn't even own 1% of it. Technically, she was a guest. I could have gone to the house that day and kicked her out, but I decided to wait. Why? Because I found out through a neighbor that Linda and Brad were planning renovations. They were tearing up the old-fashioned hardwood floors. They were ripping out the vintage cabinets. They were spending the life insurance money, roughly $50,000, to modernize the place so they could flip it and sell it. If I stopped them now, I'd be left with a half-destroyed house, so I let them finish. I waited 2 months. I let them spend every single dime of the insurance money fixing up my house. They put in a new marble island, a jacuzzi tub, smart lighting. My neighbor, Mrs. Higgins, told me they were bragging to everyone that they were going to list the house for $1 million next week. I smiled and said, "No, I don't think they will." The day before they planned to list the house, I showed up. But I didn't come alone. I brought a sheriff's deputy and my lawyer. Linda opened the door. She looked fantastic. She was glowing. "What are you doing here?" She spat. "I told you, no handouts." My lawyer stepped forward. "Mrs. Linda, you are being served with an eviction notice. You have 48 hours to vacate the premises." She laughed. "You can't evict me. I own this house. My husband left it to me." My lawyer calmly handed her the copy of the trust. "Actually, ma'am, Mr. Frank transferred this property to the Family Preservation Trust 5 years ago. His son is the sole trustee and beneficiary. You have been squatting here for 2 months." I watched the color drain from her face. It was cinematic. "But," she stammered, "but we just spent $50,000 renovating the kitchen. We did the floors. You have to pay us back for that." I stepped forward. "I didn't ask you to do that, Linda. You did that to my house without my permission. Consider it rent." Brad came running down the stairs, looking tough. The deputy put a hand on his belt and said, "Sir, back up. This is a lawful eviction." They left 2 days later. They tried to take the new appliances with them, but the deputy stopped them. "Fixtures stay with the house, ma'am. That's the law." They left with nothing but their clothes and a maxed-out credit card. I moved back in the next week. The new kitchen, it's beautiful. Brad has terrible taste in friends, but he actually picked out great countertops. I live there now with my fiancée. Linda tried to sue me, but no lawyer would take the case. The trust was ironclad. Last I heard, she and Brad are sharing a one-bedroom apartment on the other side of town. Every time I lock my front door, I make sure to double-check the deadbolt. And I say a little thank you to Dad. What do you guys think? Was I wrong for letting them spend the money on renovations before kicking them out?